ISIS are competing for the crown of militant Islam. One calls itself the Islamic Republic, the other calls itself the Islamic State. Both want to impose a militant Islamic empire, first on the region and then on the entire world. They just disagree among themselves who will be the ruler of that empire. So when it comes to Iran and ISIS, the enemy of your enemy is your enemy.
I still think that's the highlight from that speech. Joining us now is Robert Spencer, Director of Jihad Watch and Vice President of the American Freedom Defense Initiative, AFDI, I should say. Hello, Robert.
Hey, Steve. How are you?
I'm good. Good to talk to you. Okay, so, you know, there's still fallout from this speech. Most everybody that's like-minded to us, and even many Democrats say that this was a brilliant speech. It spelled out everything that needed to be said, but there are those in the media and on the ultra-left in the Congressional Black Caucus and some others that say Netanyahu invaded the chamber, trying to take over our foreign policy, trying to get us to go to war for Israel, blah, 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 blah. So when all is said and done, how do you think this is going to be remembered?
Well, I think that the ferocity of the reaction from the Democrats indicates how effective the speech was. They know that he hit a home run. They know that he was statesmanlike in a way that Barack Obama never has been and never will be. They know that he spoke the truth. And so all they could say was how insulted they were. I mean, I thought it was really appalling how Nancy Pelosi said she was in tears at his condescension and insisted, well, we know that Iran is a threat. We know that Iran wants a nuclear weapon. We know that Iran has genocidal intentions. And yet, if they know all that, why is it that they are so energetically trying to aid and abet Iran's agenda?
Yeah, well, that's an absolutely darn good question. All right, we have a lot more to get to. Let me ask you about New York City just announced that they are going to honor 2 Muslim holidays within the calendar year, the school year, and close New York City schools in unprecedented fashion. Of course, schools have always been closed for the Jewish holidays, the High Holy Days, and for the Christmas vacation and, you know, and the Easter holidays.
Well, you know, Steve, this is just another example of how the Islamic jihadis and Islamic supremacists, the so-called moderate Muslims who are their allies, like the Hamas-linked Council on American Islamic Relations and other groups of that kind, have used 9/11 to try to gain unprecedented concessions and accommodation from American officials. They are trying to deflect attention away from the reality of jihad terror and to chip away at the Judeo-Christian foundations of this country to present Islam as something entirely benign, having nothing to do with terrorism, and so on. There's no doubt that if 9/11 had not happened, the Muslim holidays would not be in the New York City schools calendar today. But de Blasio said, the mayor of New York, that we're doing this to honor the extraordinary contributions of Muslims to New York City. And I thought, what contributions? Maybe a lot of innovations in security apparatus and in security techniques, but what else? The new tower at the World Trade Center is marginally less unsightly than the old ones, and so you could, I guess, credit them with some architectural improvements. But really, what contributions? The only thing is that this is part of the effort by Islamic groups to portray themselves as victims of unwarranted scrutiny after 9/11, and to try to gain a legitimacy that will intimidate people into closing down honest examination of the way Islamic jihadis use the texts and teachings of Islam to justify violence and supremacism.
Well, and Robert, what I'm afraid of also is that what goes along with, you know, recognizing these holidays is a lopsided, false representation and teaching to very impressionable youngsters of what these holidays are and what these holidays mean.
No doubt about that. Absolutely. They're going to get, they already get in public schools, a whitewashed version of Islam. It's a scandal that's a nationwide thing. I hear from parents all the time who show me textbooks that are harshly critical of Christianity, critical of Judaism, but entirely positive and benign about Islam. They never mention jihad warfare. They never mention the bloody history of conquests and oppression. They give the impression that this is an entirely benign and positive force for the good of humanity. And or often borders on outright proselytizing. There is no doubt that the education that will go along with the teachings about these holidays will be in the same vein.
You know, I just sometimes take a deep breath and say, how on earth did we get here from 14 years ago or 13 years ago? How on earth did this happen?
You know, Steve, there has been a concerted effort by groups like the Hamas-linked Council on American Islamic Relations and others, that whenever there's a jihad terror attack, 9/11 was the first, they portray Muslims as the real victims of it. Muslims as the victims of an Islamophobic backlash, innocent Muslims being victimized, and so on. This doesn't really happen. There is no significant backlash after terror attacks. Jews are targeted for hate crimes 8 times more often than Muslims are, according to FBI statistics. There is no climate of hate against Muslims, but the Muslim groups are trying to portray trying to convey the idea that there is, in order to intimidate law enforcement and intimidate the public.
And you know what, Robert, not to interrupt, but we're out of time. They're doing unfortunately, they're doing a heck of a job. But so are you and Jihad Watch. Thank you for joining us, Robert.
Always a pleasure, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, folks, up next, senior writer of the Weekly Standard, Mark Hemingway, will be here.